And I think we're live, so hi everyone.
We are. Good morning.
And apologies for the delay. We had a few little technical issues going on our end, but we're finally here with you now. So, all good. First of all, let's just introduce you for those who are new here. You've come into one of our Genre Talk discussions, which is a series that my friend Alina and I do once a month. And we talk about various different genres, and we look at what books we've written in them, what books we like reading in them, if there's any film and TV that's relevant that we like to have a little natter about as well. And today we're here to talk about graphic novels, manga, comics, all those kind of illustrated stories. So my name's Nicki, and I am an author and editor, and I post videos here on YouTube about writing, editing, reading, and all the other things I love. And with me today, I have my very good friend Alina, so I'll let her introduce herself as well.
Hello, everyone. My name is Alina. I'm a genre fiction author, and I write a lot of genres because I hate myself and I can't decide. And as Nicki, I suppose, I'm quite passionate about everything illustrated and telling stories through images with some text in there. So this should be a very interesting episode for us to discuss, I think, because of our more artistic, how do I call them, sensibilities? I don't know. I have no idea.
I think that'll do as a word choice. Yeah. I mean, it's probably quite an interesting one because you're probably a little bit better read in this area than I am. It's something I've only started to get into a little bit more recently.
I mean, yes, sort of. I think I've watched more anime than I've read mangas and graphic novels, but I did read quite a few. And I did read other comics as well. As a kid, some local ones and whatever reached us. And I always liked illustrated books.
Yes.
As in having illustrations in all kinds of novels, because I remember reading Jules Verne as a kid, and you always had like a few illustrations in his books, and I always found them fascinating, and I always loved that. And then as I grew up, I got more into the whole visual aspect of storytelling and just reading highly graphic stories, let's call them, where the art and the drawn characters were more important than the actual dialogue or the prose, let's say. So yeah, that's my history with it. I'm a geek. To no one's surprise, it's fine.
Well, on that note, if I perhaps I'll do a little brief overview of what I've read and how I've come into them. Then we can discuss that compared to yours, perhaps, to kick things off today. So, I mean, I didn't read comics as a child, which probably surprises anyone who knows what an MCU fangirl I am. But I only came to that from the films. I've never picked up a comic when I was younger. I think the first ones I probably read were actually when Buffy continued as a graphic novel. And I got the first, what was season 8, essentially, of Buffy on NetGalley. It was fairly soon after I'd started using NetGalley. So it was sort of new to me reading ebooks in some way, and also reading it with illustrations. And my e-reader at the time, I had a Kobo, and this is fairly early on in e-reader life. So it wasn't the best, and it didn't handle illustration very well. So I do remember I had to sit and read those on the PC because my e-reader just wouldn't keep up with turning the pages and handling the graphics. So those were probably the first ones I read. And then next, I probably got 2 because I watched the anime of Vampire Knight, and I really loved Vampire Knight. And unlike Alina, I haven't watched quite as much anime, but I did adore Vampire Knight. So I did get the manga, and I've got both volumes. I've got like volume 1 here, the box set, and I've got the volume 2 box set. So I've got all of them. So those were probably my next foray. And that I was coming to that kind of already knowing at least the bulk of the first part of the story because I'd seen the anime. But I wanted to know how it was all going to end. They didn't continue with the anime after season 2. And next, I probably went to these ones, which are the Heroes ones, because I came to Heroes late. I didn't watch it as it was streaming. I watched it later on like Netflix when I came across it. and really loved it. And I mean, I'll probably bring these with me again in a future stream, because later on we're going to talk about transmedia, and I can't remember if it's next month or a little bit later in the year, but we will be doing a transmedia chat. So that will be relevant then, because that obviously ties in with sharing bits of the storytelling between what were the web comics that they've turned into the books and the TV series. And I guess the only other one I've really done is I've read a few, such as this one, The Man Who Laughs, which is where they've done classic novels redone as graphic novels, which does seem to be a bit of a thing. I've seen quite a few coming around, Shakespeare as well.
Yeah, that's my latest one was The Count of Monte Cristo as a graphic novel with a very manga style, and I agree that's a trend now to redo the classics like this. I think because they're easier to digest in this format.
Yes,
especially for people who can't really get into the style of the classics.
Yeah, because sometimes that style of prose just puts people off a bit, I think, because it is tends to be long, complicated sentences.
Yeah, I think if you didn't grow up with it, and if you didn't enjoy reading them early on, later in life, if you've already been exposed to today's styles of prose, coffee, then you just have a hard time getting into it, I feel.
Yeah. I definitely see that. That's definitely an upcoming area. I've been seeing quite a few of those around, those adaptations of Shakespeare and the classics. Also, there seems to be a bit of a trend lately, I noticed, towards redoing popular YA books as graphic novels as well.
Oh, yeah. I've noticed that. I've never been interested because I'm very picky with my YA fiction. Because I am. I was going to say that I came to graphic novels in a very roundabout way, actually. Like I said, I was reading them as a kid, but it was a very different style of comics. There were some local ones that were later remade with like local fairy tale heroes, things like that. But I wasn't that much into them as a kid because there wasn't a lot of variety. Basically, I have some memories of my friends having the Pif magazines, like the French ones.
Yes.
But I was never into French, so I wasn't into those a lot. Because when I started studying a foreign language, I was 8 at the time, and we started with English, and I completely adored it. And because I adored it, and because it was this English versus French war, we kind of did say we didn't want to learn French, and we pronounced everything in French with an English accent, which was ridiculous.
Well, I think that's just like most English people speaking French anyway, Alina.
No, because we could actually speak French. That was, I mean, we have a different sort of accent in French, but it was clear it was fake, and we were just being mean. And it didn't help that I didn't have very interesting French teachers. I actually had very bad luck when it comes to French teachers, because the moment I got good teachers, I started learning, and I was like the best in my class because I thought it was awesome. So that counted a lot. So there were comics out there, but not the kind of comics that would attract me. And Pif were like, they were like kid stuff by the time they started orbiting around me. Because this was like post-communist Romania. I was like 8 or 9. I was already reading on my own. So some silly magazines were like, nah. If I would have had access to actual comics, I would have probably adored them, but that wasn't the case. So then I got to anime because they started airing them here when I was like in middle school, and everyone was crazy about them. And I kind of got sucked into that. I did have a Sailor Moon album and had stickers, and now if I try to watch an episode of Sailor Moon, I'm like, they're like changing clothes for 60% of the episode. Why the hell was I watching this? I remember I tried watching them again, and it took me like 3 hours to watch six seasons, because I would just watch the first couple of episodes, skip through the clothes changing, and then go to the end, to the final 2 episodes, because the last in the middle was just no. I know the later seasons are different, but thanks, no. So I grew up with anime and I love them. So when I discovered there's such a thing as boys love, this was recent, like 5 to 6 years ago, I think. I discovered boys love exists. And I discovered it by chance because I was looking for an anime to watch, and I was looking for a romantic comedy, and there was one highly recommended, which turned out to be a boys love anime, and I never looked back. But the problem is there aren't as many adaptations of boys love, so I was like, oh, I'll just read the manga, which I did. I read a lot of it, and then kind of worked my way into other genres of manga, and then I just happened to come across a lot more webcomics, which actually, to be fair, I was reading webcomics before I was reading manga, but I kind of lost touch with the ones I enjoyed because they were like uni oriented, and when I got past the uni phase, they just didn't mesh well with me anymore. It was like, this is no, I'm not reading it anymore. And I keep discovering new ones now, which is fine. And then I started reading more graphic novels because they appeared everywhere, and I got them through Nicki. And I was going to try them. And I think it's enjoyable. For me, it's nice that I've read the book and then the graphic novel. I think that's more enjoyable than just reading the graphic novel, because then you lose a lot of the story. So that's my roundabout story with them. We had a sort of long relationship, but with many breaks in between because of mostly circumstances. I think if comics were a bigger thing here, I would have been totally into them, but they weren't. And by the time they started being a thing, I was just too old for the ones they brought, I think. I think that was mainly the disconnect. Because I remember loving the Spider-Man cartoons. They were my favorite because he was so funny and so witty, and I would have devoured those comics, definitely. But they just weren't around. Thank God we had Cartoon Network, and thank God it was not dubbed at that point. It was not dubbed, it was in English, and that's how I learned a lot of my vocabulary, because otherwise you wouldn't have, you could have studied English as much as you wanted, you wouldn't have known about, parts of ships, like spaceships, and weaponry and things like that. I just wouldn't have been able to, because you don't really come across these, and this was before the internet age, let's face it, so kind of hard to supplement. So I'm really thankful for that. But it was a very poorly serviced type of media, let's say, over here when I was growing up. And by the time it was a thing, I was already a working adult. My time was limited. I spent it on books, and that's how it happened. But now I'm all about that, and I think that's what led to me being very passionate about visual novels, which I'm not sure they fit anywhere in our genre talk, because they're kind of different. But that sort of narrative story telling that has a lot of imagery attached, but also a lot of narrative. I think that's like the perfect combo for me between graphic novels and novels with illustration, let's say, because you keep seeing your characters on screen, but it's actually reading text for most of it. So
I think with those kind of illustrated novels, I definitely read a lot in my childhood, because things like I had illustrated versions of like Neverending Story, Narnia, And also all the Ronald Dahl books used to be illustrated as well by Quentin Blake, I think the name was.
Yeah.
And so I read all those like in my childhood, at the point where I was kind of independently reading. I was like, good enough, I just go off and get my own stuff. I don't tend to see it quite so much in adult, except for maybe things like Lord of the Rings, some of those talking illustration. You get lots of nice illustrated editions of The Hobbit and things these days.
Yeah.
But I think for me, I mean, I've definitely stuck mostly so far to ones where I already know the story. As you say, it's like you've already read the books, you've got all that in-depth information, and then you can enjoy seeing that story told in a more visual medium.
Exactly.
I've tried a couple because I know, like, I mean, Dream Spinner in the gay romance side of things, but particularly Harlequin at the moment have started doing this manga range. And I've tried one or two of them on NetGalley, and I've sort of found them a bit middle of the road for me, because I thought, well, the illustrations are beautiful and I like that side of it, but I've tended to find the stories a little bit lacking in depth. I kind of feel like I want more all the time from them, and they're just a bit predictable, and the characters just pretty two-dimensional.
I think when it comes to manga, I think the people kind of stumble across the style of illustration and don't read a lot before they start writing them. I don't know what the problem is, because okay, there are a lot of fluffy manga. There are, but most of them are quite. I'd like to say that they range from deep and the type that makes you think, type of story that makes you think, to all the way to severely disturbing. It will still make you think, but it can end like really badly. There are quite a lot that are tragic, and I think when you try to have a take on that and create something that's technically it's not manga, it's a comic, because it depends how you go with your definitions, but manga and anime, as we name them outside of Japan, are things that are done in Japan.
Yeah.
I don't think they care much. I think they're pretty thrilled that we're adopting their styles. I think we're more worried about it than them. But manga fans who are not from Japan will tell you that's not manga, because a Japanese mangaka didn't draw it, basically. I really don't care. But the thing is that when you try to do something like that, I think you have to dive deeper into it and add some substance to it. If you're making it very, I don't know, shallow, people will be like, I just can't read a translation of an actual manga. Why would I waste my time on that? So yeah, but I've seen a lot of comics with manga style that are kind of amazing. They're not mainstream though. They're just from artists that I follow on YouTube. Basically, some web comics, or printed, but they make them and sell them themselves. And those tend to be a lot better, because you realize these people actually know the genre way better than a mainstream publisher would. Because I feel like those are like, oh, this is trending and Netflix is doing great with anime adaptations, like let's try it, and we'll get an artist, we'll get someone to write the story, and they're not exactly the best people to do it. I think they'd have way better luck just finding independent artists and trying to convince them to publish through them. Yeah.
I mean, we've sort of just mentioned there, you touched upon like the idea of the popularity of the Japanese culture and how this is leading into that. I mean, I kind of see it as, it does seem to be a big new trend. There's a lot more graphic stuff coming out than there was even 5 years ago that I remember seeing around. Obviously, there's the big imprints. People like DC and Marvel have always been
DC
doing
and Marvel
stuff,
are kind of doing this. And it's the movies, I think, that drove sales a lot. And I think people like to shit on the Big Bang Theory a lot, because they say that there are too many cliches, which some of them are. But then the longer you work in IT and the deeper you get into IT, you recognize some of those people. Sure, they're like the most extreme cases of people who are a bit socially awkward, but extremely smart and super good at what they do. But pretending like those people don't exist is weird. Second of all, this was created like 10 years ago, and it kind of brought the geek culture into the mainstream, and it was suddenly cool to be geek. So people who are just now getting into it probably have a bit of a disconnect. But the thing is that I think that show helped a lot. It had like 10 million seasons, and all they were doing was talking about the comic book store and playing online games and being geeks like most of the times, and talking about superheroes. I'm sure all that with all the Marvel movies and even the DC movies, which suck. But anyway, we'll watch them because Superman or Spider-Man is in the other one. So no, there's actually nothing good about DC.
No, it's funny actually, because DC, I don't like the DC movies, but I don't find their comic book characters particularly interesting. They don't grip me the way like Captain America or some of the others do in Marvel. But what I do like is when they've done TV series and films based on some of their graphic novels. So not from their main DC comics, but from their imprints. Vertigo, I think is one imprint, isn't it? But things like V for Vendetta, when they did Constantine as the TV series, perhaps not the movie with Keanu Reeves, but I've really enjoyed some of those, which just made me think, oh, maybe I would enjoy reading those graphic novels. But those are very much graphic novels rather than weekly comics.
Yeah, I think the problem, I mean, I like the comics. I always liked Superman as a character. But I think I liked him more in the older movies. And the thing is, I think I like Arrow a lot. Green Arrow, which is now renamed to Arrow. I'm not sure if I like the newer version as much as I like the version of Arrow in Smallville, for example.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Smallville as a TV series was great, and that was DC Comic Universe all the way. I really enjoy that. But yeah, I don't know. DC movies are just, they still make money, I think, because otherwise they stop making them. But I think they just haven't found their niche. But let's face it, there were Superman and Batman movies way before the whole Marvel Universe thing started. Yes. And I think everything in time contributed to how popular the genre is today. So yeah, but I think it's also because we're in the age of the internet. Netflix is going deep into anime. They're streaming anime and they're making their own. And Castlevania was spectacular. I watched that one. Yeah. I will not comment on the inaccuracy of religion as it's portrayed in Romania. I'm pretty sure there weren't any huge Catholic churches this far into Romania. We didn't really have many Catholic churches. Actually, the Hungarian Empire had to make a sort of a crossover because between Orthodoxy and Catholicism.
Right.
And I think it's called Greco-Catholic. I don't remember, but that's more prevalent than actual Catholicism, and it was only in Transylvania. And yet, all these events kind of happened in Muntenia, which was like Orthodox country all the way. And it's weird to me, but I think that was a stylistic choice because of the game and what was in the game and whatever. And they made it look cool, so I don't mind. But it was a great adaptation. And then they had the Devilman Crybaby adaptation, which was amazing. And it has such a unique style that it almost looks like it's ugly, but it's not. And it's a very interesting way of animating things. And then you have Crunchyroll, which is distributing anime almost everywhere. And there are anime and manga YouTube channels that are very popular, and they get more attention now that everyone is watching anime. And I think all of these kind of contributed to how popular it is. But I think there's a disconnect between what we expect from people in the movie and animation industry to do and how they treat things in Japan, because I know there have been some issues with people commenting on how the characters are dressed in Japanese games or in anime, and nobody cares. Nobody cares. They don't care. They'll do the things they want because they work. And let's face it, they're way more together than we are.
Yeah.
In terms of sex crimes and things like that. So yeah. But I think it's a lot of controversy happened around anime and manga because they got on this world stage and our Western sensibilities were a bit offended by it. Which is, what would you expect? It's a different culture. They have different views. So yeah, it's an interesting market to watch, and it's interesting to watch the battle between manga and anime and the comics and animations we're used to, because I think there's a huge production behind anime, but I'm not sure they're that geared toward world domination. I think when they finally do that, and they collaborate with more people like Crunchyroll and distribute more, it will be interesting to watch. I'm thinking anime might win because they're interesting and better, and the stories are very different. And you can tell they've had like decades of animation to learn and improve and make very cool stuff and very weird stuff as well. So
yeah, and I do wonder whether sort of social media trends affects that as well, because obviously we are becoming very visual, and with we're more used to getting more and more used to looking at images and video as opposed to text as we're scanning through things online, and I wonder if that also contributes to the growth in interest in reading more graphic style text as well.
Yes and no. I mean, I know there's a massive demand for visual novels now where the graphics are not as prevalent. There's a lot more text going on. I know visual novels usually do well on Steam, and there haven't been a lot. And I know people wait for like a long time for visual novels that are made in Japan to be translated. And everyone that I've seen is quite popular, even if they're not the greatest, because there's not a lot of them. But if they're good, they build a following quite fast. What I want to say. So I don't know. I think it depends. It helps though. It kind of bridges the gap between reading and watching stuff. And yes, social media helps. But I think social media has helped a lot more because of the prevalence of anime-related memes as well.
Yes.
Because I think if you don't like graphic novels or comics at all, anime and manga won't change a lot. Yeah. Maybe anime, and it's a thing where they adapt a manga into anime, and the anime is well behind, and then people might turn to the manga, but they won't stay outside of that. So I think they kind of tap into an audience of people who are already open to that. But with new readers coming in, like children and teenagers moving into this, I don't know. I guess we'll see. I'm not sure, because I think that's the same for you. We're getting information from a lot of places, and we're on AuthorTube and YouTube side of things. There are a lot of young people who read a lot. So I'm not sure. I think it will be a mix of everything for these people, and graphic novels and comics will be part of normal reading. That's my take.
And in fact, it's funny because you were mentioning Big Bang just then, but I've probably picked up a whole load of stuff from Big Bang that I probably wouldn't have known about. I mean, obviously, as you know, I'm an MCU fangirl, but I probably wouldn't know as much general facts and bits about DC characters unless I'd watched the Big Bang Theory. And my mother hates Big Bang Theory. She thinks it's absolute junk, but my father likes it. And we sort of have chats about it, and you do start referencing it. Like, I have a favourite seat in the Eximax screen at my local cinema, and that is my seat. And if I don't get my seat, I am quite upset. And I've taken to calling it my Sheldon seat, you know, like he has his like spot in the lounge where no one's allowed to sit. It's like that's in the cinema is my Sheldon seat, and I do get really upset if anyone's in my Sheldon seat.
I think that's the thing. I think people who don't relate to this quirkiness will have a problem with it and think it's weird. But then I'm like the opposite of Sheldon in everything. I'm a big extrovert. But then because of my relationship with my desk mate in secondary school, her hearing in one of her ears was a bit impaired. She wasn't deaf in that year, but it wasn't that great. So I was always on her right side.
Right.
And we did that like in the morning, walking to school, all throughout 5 or 6 or 7 hours at school, and then going back and then doing stuff together. So now, if I'm the last person on the left, I go insane. Like, I don't like it. I dislike it. I feel like I'm a fish out of water, and I just don't like it. I need someone to be on my left. Yeah. Otherwise, I feel unnatural. And I've tried to just bear with it, but it just drives me insane. So then I just don't do it. So I totally relate with that sort of quirk, I think. And with desperately waiting for a new episode of something to come out, or fangirling over Comic-Con. Although I feel like Comic-Con happened here when I was already too old for me to get into it. The first time it came, was it the first time or the second Comic-Con that I made it to? No, the first one I couldn't make it, and I was devastated. I made it to the second one, and I enjoyed it a lot. But you know, I was a 30-year-old girl going to her first Comic-Con, and this was kind of small because it was just starting here, and I was like,
I've never been to one, and we do get a small one here in Adelaide, and we also get a supernova, which is similar style thing. And every year I go, next year maybe I'll go, but I'm always torn because I'm kind of like interested in going because I think I'd like to see the actors and see the events and things, but at the same time I really hate being in crowds where you're just like shoved around from place to place, and I kind of imagine that that's what it'd be like, so that kind of puts me off. So I've still never gone, but maybe one year I will finally do it.
Yeah, and I don't mind the crowds that much. It's just that I felt like there wasn't enough happening. But it was just starting out. I think it's way bigger now. And if I'd more than anything go to an anime and manga convention.
Yeah.
I'd go to that because I think like the only things I bought at that Comic-Con were 2 posters with Sebastian, because they were manga posters. But you know, they were very limited because there was just one seller with one stand, kind of hidden away, that had manga and anime stuff. Right. So yeah, I'd rather go to that.
Yeah, and I think that sometimes the cost. Sometimes the cost gets a bit prohibitive as well. Like a couple of times I've looked at going because there's been an actor who I wanted to meet, but then you go, right, it's that much to get in. That's okay. I don't mind paying that. But then you're like, okay, if I want to meet them, it costs this much. If I want an autograph, it costs this much. If I want a photo, it costs this much. And it starts to get a bit cost prohibitive.
Yeah, I never cared about that. Like, I never was allowed to go and meet that guy.
That probably because I used to do stage door meets when I used to go to the theatre a lot in England, and it was a bit of a thing. You didn't pay anything then, of course, which is probably what puts me off having to do it now. But you used to, after a show, you used to just walk around to the back of the theatre and hang around at the stage door until the actors came out. And I've got like albums and full of pictures, and I've got all my programs signed, sometimes by fairly famous people if they happened to be in a play that I went to see. And you just go and meet them. If you don't mind standing in the cold for half an hour, you can meet them for free and you get an autograph and photo. And it's like, they want to charge you like $100, $200 for 2 seconds.
The thing is, like, I don't mind that. It's just that it's, as you said, it's 2 seconds of your life where they're haggard and barely keeping it together because they've been doing this for hours.
Yeah.
If I were to pay for something, I'd actually pay. Like I know of a guy on YouTube who went to like a dinner with George R.R. Martin.
Oh yeah.
And they paid. They ate the dinner. Everyone got the chance to talk to George R.R. Martin for a bit, and that's a lot more.
Yeah,
of the
better experience. Yeah.
Or I don't know if it were someone I really wanted to meet. Like if I went to a Comic-Con and Gigak and the Anime Men were there, I'd probably do it. just because they're just so funny and they're so inspiring. And come on, I have like my character in the Cozy Mystery has a T-shirt that says "Anime is trash and so am I," which is like a phrase that Giga came up with. So I would go to support people who had an impact on me, but they're not that big, because they're paid to go to these conventions, and if people show support, they'll come again. And as long as they make enough money to keep doing this, they'll keep providing me with this content. But this is an independent sort of thing. I don't think Marvel needs my money for this. I don't know what actor, when I've already paid for their movies. Like
not after they just got the box office record for the quickest $2 billion or whatever it is.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I could actually support some indie people more. But that's just my take on it. But I would like to go to a place where there's a well-developed artist alley, where I can find original stuff or fan art of stuff that interests me. Because I'm sorry, I'm not interested in paying on fan art for, I don't know, Spider-Man or whatever. No, my interests are in different places. I'm sorry, I prefer other style of animations and graphics. And because we're talking about that, maybe it bears mentioning that I'm very particular about the drawing style I like.
Right.
There are styles that just put me off. I don't know. And if I don't like the style of drawing for a graphic novel, there's a high chance I won't read it. And I don't necessarily need it to be all cutesy, because I adore the style of Berserk, for example, which Berserk is kind of dark and vicious, but I like the style. There are other people who do graphic novels and manga, and I would like to support them, especially if they're indies, but I just don't like the style.
Yeah.
And I find that really important. And it's what I'm picky about, because if I don't like the style, I won't read it. That's just it. I won't even get to the story to see if I enjoy it. If I don't like the style, then why? Because I primarily buy these type of manga or novels for the graphic part.
Yeah,
That's what brings me to them. So I'm not sure how you view that part.
Yeah, I think probably the same. I mean, I haven't had quite as much experience, but I think I probably split into two camps. I do like the Japanese style looking manga, like the Vampire Knight style illustrations and way of drawing people. But I also, because I'm particularly a realist artist, I prefer to draw realism, and I prefer to look at realism. I really hate any art pretty much after the Victorian era, when it becomes a bit too cubist and bizarro. So if it's not that Japanese style, then I prefer it to look as realistic as possible.
Oh, yeah.
I think I'd probably be put off if it was something that didn't fit into one of those two boxes, if you like.
Yeah, I mean, I like realism, and I like the realism of the latest. There was a huge thing with Batman in the nude.
No, I obviously missed that one.
Oh yeah. He appeared, like his junk appeared in one of the latest installments of the comic, and everyone was going bonkers because he was like Hangman. Batman's hung. But I like that style where it's cartoonish but kind of realistic, more realistic than a manga. And I like that taken even a bit further. So you have like realistic anatomy, but it looks cartoonish. I enjoy that. But when it's kind of cartoonish style anatomy where things don't exactly make sense, I prefer the manga style.
Yeah.
I don't like the Western cartoonish styles that much. And I'll be back in a second because my phone's dying, and I
plug you in.
Sorry.
While Alina's gone, I'll show you some illustrations here. So this is a book which probably illustrates my point pretty well, actually. because this is the one I got that is based on The Man Who Laughs, which I got only because I really love the story, the Victor Hugo story. But I don't actually love the illustration style. Because it's kind of cartoony, but it's not realistic enough for me. This probably illustrates it quite well. Whereas, like the Heroes one varied. There were some, I think they had different artists at different points, and some of them looked pretty realistic, and some of them didn't so much. And I prefer the more realistic looking ones. I'm just trying to sort of find an illustration of it. There we go. That's a suitable one. So fairly realistic looking, and I mean, like the style on the front, I guess, as well, where it is sort of all correct, as you say. You can see it's cartoony, but it's correct, as opposed to that one that I showed you earlier, The Man Who Laughs, which was very cartoony. That doesn't appeal to me visually quite so much.
Yeah, no, I get it. I like drawing it though. I like drawing manga a lot. That style, I think it's super awesome. But even then, I have my preferences, because I don't go for very cute girl style. For example, I like the style in Cowboy Bebop a lot, which is less cartoonish. Let's say. I mean, it is cartoonish. It's manga. It's anime style, but you know, not so many glittery things in huge eyes. That's a thing. But then again, I'm a big fan of Umaru-chan, which is like, it's weird to describe that anime without watching it, but she is my new spirit animal. It's a story about this 16-year-old girl who's absolutely perfect. She's beautiful, very smart, very kind, very nice to everyone until she goes home, when she turns into like a tantrum pulling toddler who only eats potato chips and drinks cola, which that's how she calls it, cola, and plays video games, reads manga and watches anime, and drives her brother insane, and she's a sloth basically when at home. So that's kind of like the way she's portrayed. It's mostly in chibi style because they want to show the transformation from this very beautiful young lady into this menace of a child, which I think would put Dennis the Menace to shame, like always. So yeah, I mean, it's weird, but I mean, when I draw stuff, I go for a bit more realistic proportions, like. But then again, I do want to draw stuff for visual novels in the future. So those will all be pure manga style, because that's the style I like. So
yeah, I mean, we've got a comment here I see from Aphrodite Lee.
Hey Aphrodite, thanks for stopping by.
She'd love for her novel to become a graphic novel, and yeah, I mean, I think some of mine I think would lend better than others, but I definitely would like it. And I mean, as you may or may not know, viewers, Alina and I are both amateur artists. We both do a little bit of sketching, and Alina does some paintwork as well. And I don't know. I kind of think that in some ways I'd like to do my own, because I think that you've got the complete control and freedom. But I don't know whether I'd ever be able to do it. Because as you know, I only do realism portraits pretty much, and I don't know if I could bring myself to step back enough to do a more cartoon graphic novel style of drawing. I think that would be hard for me.
The thing is that I think I could. I mean, I want to learn to draw in that style as well, and while the basics are easy to learn, getting consistent with character design is different, and not getting into the same face syndrome and all of that. But I think I would like to collaborate with someone who has done comics or manga before, because the way you pace things in a manga is important. The way you split your page, the flow and things like that are stuff that you learn in time. So I think a collaboration would be cool. But let's face it, I'm like at least 2 years out until the point where I can do that. But it's because, I mean, I think I would like to do that myself, because I'm a bit eclectic in what I like to draw, and it's pretty much what I like to see that I like to draw. So I like realism, but I also like the manga style a lot, and cartoonish things. And I would like to do backgrounds as well, and I don't know, maybe do a blend of traditional and digital art. I think that would be cool. And yeah, I mean, I'd love that. And I think some stories definitely work better with this.
Yeah.
I think action stories and angsty love stories all work well.
Yeah.
Not sure how a mystery would work, but I think that works too. I don't know. It's nice, but I'm not sure if I'd like to turn my actual novels into this, or just create a new story that lends itself perfectly to the medium.
Yeah. I mean, I wondered about, I've got my little transmedia obsession, which we will talk about more in our transmedia discussion when we get to that. But that's something that I'd probably do as a first step, and maybe not try and do a whole novel as a graphic piece, but maybe have a little section of story, that something that happens off page in the novel that I can present as a small, like, little comic illustrated piece as an additional thing for readers to find, kind of thing.
Or a spin-off, a spin-off of things that I can, do in a comic.
Yes.
A comic serial or something like that. But let's face it, I still have a lot of work to do until I get to that point. But I want to, because with my art, that's my main goal, to get to a point where I can take care of all my illustration needs for my books and my stories in general. So I need to lean into realism a bit for the covers, and then I can do the manga style as well. You still have to learn anatomy. The thing is, the basics you still have to learn for both style, and then you just invest in whichever you want to develop first. Because while it sometimes seems like manga is not exactly anatomically correct, they stylize a lot and they make informed choices. They still have like what do you call it? A line of gravity, and they wouldn't fall over if they existed in real life. So you still need to learn the basic. I'm so sorry nobody from here has Trump as a president. Nick is from Australia, I'm from Romania. We just simply don't care. So yeah, thanks for stopping by. Thanks for stopping by, Rail Gunter. I would definitely enjoy a bit of strolling in the morning. Jesus.
Well, as we've just been told, Jesus is Trump. So
I mean, I'm an agnostic with bouts of atheism, so that does not offend me at all. So
and I'm a Lokian Northern pagan. So oh well.
Yeah, we're no, sorry, I'm from Romania. We've been torn apart and made parts of other empires for like 2,000 years. We just don't care for being part of another holy empire. We've been part of a holy empire before.
Anyway, back at the graphic novels and and manga. I mean, I think we have probably pretty much covered most of it. I mean, neither of us have actually done any projects so far. Obviously, we've just had a discussion about.
No, I just have them planned for the future. I do have some projects planned for the future in terms of visual novels and illustrating my novels. I might have versions of illustrated, I don't know, werewolf stories in my universe or something, but it would be something more like having a few illustrations within the book and doing it as a full graphic novel. Well, thanks for the like, and see you around, Rail Gunter.
Bye.
Jesus. I'm sorry if it bothers you, tell me, but I always engage the trolls and I'm nice to them and try not to antagonize them, because then I don't fit the trolls. Oh, Jesus. But it's fun. It's fun. It's great. I'm sorry, people.
Well, it's very exciting for me, because I think this is the most comments I've had on one of my live streams before.
Oh, that works.
That'd be cool, Aphrodite.
Works really well. And I think the way you have to think about it, if you can put your story into a very visual sort of content, then it works. If it's a very introspective story, it might be harder to follow.
Yeah, if it's too psychological and really into the character, then I don't think it would work quite as well. But if you've got something where there's a lot of action and actual events going on.
Yeah, unless you adapt it, I guess, to show through actions and interactions rather than have the character think on their own.
Yeah.
Of course, if they're a recluse, it might not work that well. I was thinking about this for a long time. I think the most appropriate stories I have that would work with this would be either my sci-fis or my paranormals. And German fantasy, because there's a lot of action involved and possibly a lot of blood. Not telling you anything more because I still want people to read my book. And by the way, I was talking about this with Claire the other day, and I decided that probably telling people like, oh yeah, it goes really bad in the end, but the second book is bad too, but not as bad as the first and the third book. It's not the best way to sell your stories, just to threaten people that they might be shocked. Just saying, maybe not. So yeah, but I think romances are easy to adapt as well if you've read enough romance comics and manga, because then you kind of get to know it. And they have very creative visual ways of expressing a person's emotion.
Yes.
A drawing, which is quite interesting. And through pacing, because they slow down where they need to, and then it picks up later, and it works. I think it works okay. Plus, it gets you like full background depending on where it happens. But yeah, we covered a lot in very little time. I'm so proud of us. Which is always a reason to celebrate. I don't know.
And we only really had one little digression today as well. Well, two if we count the troll, but we won't count him.
Yeah.
I'm just having a look a little ahead in our spreadsheet just so we can tell people what's coming up.
I don't know. I've seen Sega games. I've not seen the graphic novels. I don't know. I don't think so. Aphrodite.
So
the graphic are they spin-offs from their games or their character universe or something completely different? Because I really have no clue.
No, I haven't come across them either.
I mean, they make Sonic, right? I know they make Sonic the Hedgehog, and I know there is a live action adaptation for. Oh, but no, that's Sega with an E, not. I've now noticed she wrote SAGA. So I was wrong. It's not that. I have no idea what that is.
We will look it up when we finish our talk.
Yeah, I just thought Sega, and I didn't even look at how it's spelled, because I just saw the SGA and I was like, oh yeah, it's Sega, and then I was like, oh, there's an A in there, Alina. Maybe use your eyes. I don't know the series. Sorry. What is it? Wait, I'll Google it. Epic space opera.
Oh, okay, that sounds like your sort of thing then, Alina.
Yeah, it really does. March 2012 to present. Oh, okay. No, I didn't know. Star Wars meets Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones. Yeah, might be interesting. I've not read that, but yeah, sounds like my sort of thing. If that's the one you were mentioning. If you send the link here, it won't show because YouTube won't let it. But if you send it to me on Facebook, then I can see it. So yeah, the last point you mentioned in the spreadsheet.
Yeah. So just to let everyone know what we've got coming up as we sort of draw to a close today. So we will be back on Alina's channel next time when we are doing one of our read-alongs. And our category this time is, or our genre is contemporary romance. And we're going to be talking about Slammed Into You by C.M. Valancourt. So this is a gay romance contemporary piece. And we'll be talking a bit about that. We'll both have read it and we'll have a few thoughts to share on it, both in and of itself as an example of contemporary gay romance. So that is June. And I mean, we haven't, because of our technical difficulties, we haven't had time to check the dates before we kicked off. But I think the first Sunday is the 2nd. So if Alina and I are both free, it'll probably be the 2nd, or else look out for us the following week. And then we'll be back on my channel again in July, when we'll be continuing our discussions like today. And we're actually on RPG next time, according to my spreadsheet. So that's something a bit different. And that's probably one you'll be leading a bit more, Alina, because I've not done a lot myself in that side of things. So
that's cool. To be honest, I'm more in tune with graphic novels and in manga and anime in that sort of a genre, but I know it's pretty big, and I've seen some of the books, and they seem quite interesting. And we're going to talk about it a lot. So if you're a fan of games in general and RPG in particular, maybe you should join us. As for the next Sunday, we'll have a better date situation for you in the next couple of weeks. Just to be fully transparent, it all has to do with my checkup for my leg and when my surgery will be scheduled. So that's why we did this within the week and not in the weekend. So I apologize for that. Things will be a bit iffy for the next few weeks again, but hopefully after that it will be way easier to schedule everything.
Yeah.
Sadly, I will no longer be a bionic woman, which kind of.
So your career as a new superhero has gone, has it, Alina? It's all going to be over once the bits of metal come out.
I mean, I just have to survive for like 30 years until we can all become immortal cyborgs, and that's
okay.
Fine. I'll go back to my superhero ways. Not that my superhero bit helped me a lot. They just slowed me down and whatever.
Thank you very much, Aphrodite, and thanks for stopping by and hanging out with us as well during our talk today.
Thank you, that was lovely. Thanks, Rel Gunter, for the short stuff.
So any final things you want to add, Alina, before we go? If you've got anything coming out in the next few weeks before our next chat that you want to discuss?
Oh, actually, yeah, I have a lot
Excellent.
of coming up. For once, I'm wrapping up a lot of things. So there will be a box set released this week for the first 4 books in my Just Don't series, which is a gay contemporary serial. And also this week there will be a pre-order out for my first ever mystery. It's a gay series. It's called Find the Man, Don't Settle Down, and it's the first book in the Owl Investigation series.
Right.
And depending on how I manage things, there might be either a pre-order or a full-on release for the next Just Don't book, which is Just Don't book 5, called Don't Rule Me Out. It starts a new story arc featuring 2 separate characters. Well, they've been introduced in the first 4 parts, but they're a separate couple, basically. I still suggest you read this in order, and that's why I'm launching the box set to make it easier for people to come into the series right now. And
sure.
So yeah, that's what I've been up to lately, and what Lent to for this month. So what are you up to?
Well, obviously I'm still doing my free read that is releasing on my Tableau page, and that's got a new chapter coming out every fortnight, and it's a paranormal romance with a bit of cogpunk, and it's set in Victorian London. So if that's your sort of thing, that's completely free to read, and there'll be all the links in that in my link tree, which will be attached below the video description there. And also I have coming out on the 3rd of June my new gay romance paranormal one, which is called Blood is Forever, and it's essentially paranormal romance, but there's a bit of a murder mystery element going on in that as well. So watch out on my channel, because I will have, as that releases, there'll be a video with me reading an excerpt and some more information and things coming in the next few weeks for that one. So that's it for me, I think.
I've already read that. I got it from Nicki and finished it in my 2 days.
She's ahead of the game.
Yes, I've enjoyed it. Yeah, for once I'm ahead of the game, because I signed up for no other promo. Yeah, and I've gone dark on my net gallery. So no, I'm fine. So yeah, you should all keep an eye on that. I think it's a very interesting take on the supernatural world. I enjoyed it.
Good. So I think we'll end there, say goodbye to everyone, and we will see you again on Alina's channel next month, and we will confirm dates in that once we see what's happening with Alina's surgery. So we'll say goodbye for now, and we'll see you all again soon.